Good morning, macro students. Miss Griffith here, going over topic 4.4 today, banking and the expansion of the money supply. The first thing you need to know is that banks hold your money. Okay, say you go into the bank and you deposit $1,000. Well, they are required by law to hold some of that money at the bank, and then they are going to loan the rest out. Why? Because banks want to make profit. And if they were just to hold all of your money, there would be no profit here. So we have this terminology, fractional reserve banking, when banks hold a portion of deposits to cover potential withdrawals and then loans the rest of the money out. Okay? In the United States, banks must hold 10% of all deposits. Hold 10% of, I'm running out of ink, of all deposits. And then they're going to loan the rest out in order to make money. If we all went to the bank at the same time and demanded all of our checking account money, the bank would not have it. That is called a bank run, and that is very bad. All right, here we go. So you've seen a lot of multipliers throughout the units. Well, now we have the money multiplier. So assume the reserve ratio in the US is 10%, which it is. So again, if I were to go deposit $100 or $1,000 into the bank, they are going to hold $100 of that. But then they are going to lend $900 out. Well, this is essentially creating money for other people. So they loan $900 out to Bob. Bob deposits $900 in his bank. Well, the bank is going to do the same thing. They're going to hold 10% of it, so they're going to hold $90, and then they're going to loan out $810 to Jill. Jill's then going to deposit the $810 into her bank, and so on, all right? So far, just with this example, it would continue going, but the initial deposit of $1,000 caused the creation, okay, kind of out of thin air, of the 1,710, which is Bob's 900 and Jill's 810, but that's going to keep going. The way we're going to know, well, how much money was actually created from this initial $900 loan, we would calculate the money multiplier, and that's 1 over the reserve ratio. In this example, it would be 1 over 0.10, which is 10. So how much money is this bank actually creating? It's the initial loan, all right, times the money multiplier. Well, the initial loan was $900 and the money multiplier is 10. So actually $9,000 is being created from the original $1,000 that you deposited into the bank. Now we're going to look at bank balance sheets, all right? Something you need to know about the terminology is that demand deposits, those are essentially the money that you deposit into the checking account. So whenever you see demand deposits, just know that is referring to checking accounts. Required reserves, well, that's the percent that the banks must hold by law. Again, in the United States, it is 10%. The excess reserves is the amount that the bank can loan out, all right, in order to make profit. We're going to go ahead and look at a balance sheet. This is a record of a bank's assets, liabilities, and net worth. So remember, assets the bank owns, all right, and the liabilities the bank owes. All right, so are demand deposits in a bank an asset or a liability? Well, they owe you that money back, right? So the demand deposits are going to go under liabilities, but it is an asset for you as the depositor because that is your money that you can get back. All right, let's take a look at this first bank balance sheet. Sorry, my table is a little sticky, okay? And I don't know why. All right, so on one side we have the bank's assets, and on the other side we have the bank's liabilities. So let's go ahead and look at their liabilities first. They have the demand deposits. So those are that's the money that you have in your checking account. Okay, and then they have over here owner's equity. Well, essentially, owner's equity is just the money owed to the owners of the bank, the people that started the bank, owners of the bank. So they will eventually need that back. And then let's look at the bank's assets. All right, well, they've loaned out money and they will get that back. They loaned it out because they are going to make a profit on that. So that is theirs, that's going to come back. Reserves, they have 500, and then treasury bonds, 1,500. The total assets is $10,000. The total liability is $10,000. These must add up at all times, and that is why we call it a bank balanced or a bank balance sheet. The bank is holding no excess reserves. How much is the required reserve ratio? So we're going to say that all of these reserves were required, okay? So in order to find the reserve ratio, I would just do 500 divided by the demand deposits. Okay, we will never add in this owner's equity because the bank does not need to hold a certain amount of the owner's equity. The bank is only required to hold a certain amount of the demand deposits. So 500 divided by 1,000, well, that is 0.1 or 10%. All right, let's start with our first example here. Sticky table. All right, I cleaned it this morning. Bank balance sheets. All right, this is just a random bank. The demand deposits are 20,000, owner's equity 5,000, required reserves 2,000, excess reserves 3,000, treasury bonds and loans. Okay, both sides add up to 25,000. It is balanced. If Bob deposits $1,000 into this bank, let's answer these questions. So first of all, what is the required reserve ratio? Well, we can find that again by doing the required reserves over the demand deposits. Remember, we don't add in that owner's equity because they don't have to hold any of that. So if we did this, we would do 2,000 divided by 20,000 to get 0.1 or 10%. Will M1 money supply initially increase, decrease, or stay the same? So essentially, Bob is putting his $1,000 cash into a checking account. But remember, cash and checking account both are included in M1, so nothing changes. This will stay the same. All right, again, because cash and checking accounts both qualify for M1. How much is the required reserves now? Okay, so after Bob deposited the $1,000 in, we are going to change the demand deposits to $21,000. How much is the required reserves now? Well, we know the required reserve ratio is 10%. So we are going to just see, well, what is 10% of 21,000? And I am just going to do 21,000 times 0.10. to get that, we must, or the bank must hold $2,100 now total. Well, how much is the excess reserves? Okay, well, of that $1,000 that Bob deposited, we held $100 of that. So $900 can be lent out. So $900 is going to go into the excess reserves, which is already $3,000. Okay, so we get $3,900 are in the excess reserves. How much more can the bank initially lend out? Well, that's that $900, right, of Bob's money. They had to save $100 of it in the required reserves, but now they can lend out $900. All right. What is the maximum change in the money supply from the deposit? What you're always going to do is you're going to do the initial loan and you're going to multiply it by the money multiplier. So that initial loan was 900. The money multiplier is always 1 over the required reserves ratio, which in this case is 10%. So really we have 900 times 10 to get us a grand total of $9,000 was created from this deposit of $1,000 by Bob.